the kids, not only did our young youth get to work with officers, get to do things with officers, we took them different places, but also there were counselors there, many of the same counselors that they see every day in school. So they were able to, before we started our sessions every day and at the end every day, they started off by speaking with the counselors, and then they also finished off that way. We do Shop with a Cop programs. We do Christmas toy drive. I mean, there's probably 25 different programs we do, and they all involve our youth. I can tell you, many times, I'm out different places, and I have kids running up to me, older kids, that are in high school. We've had kids that have graduated and say, hey, I really remember when we did a Cops and Kids program, when we were doing this. So it's building relationships. And if you build relationships and your officers build relationships, then it goes a long way for our community. So the biggest thing I can say is building relationships.
Yes, sir, you are. But it's not a question specifically for you. The question is about body cams, and since your department is the only department up here currently that has body cams, it is directed towards you inadvertently. How long is your body cam footage retained so that attorneys can obtain them for court processes?
If it's categorized as evidence, it's retained until the cases are complete. So in other words, if somebody made a traffic arrest, they made an arrest, and the body cam was a part of that, it would be kept until that case was dismissed. And that would be after the state attorney's office. And what we do is we go through them on a regular basis. We go to the state attorney's office. They say, yes, that case has been dismissed, or it's been pled out, or whatever happened with it, that case is done. At that time, the body cam for those cases would be deleted. As far as regular video, we keep them for 90 days. We keep them for 90 days if it's not categorized, or if it's categorized as non-evidentiary, they're kept for 90 days. After that time, they automatically delete.
Very quick follow-up question from the moderator. Who and how do you determine what videos are evidence?
Anything that would involve an arrest or a traffic arrest, pretty much all arrests would be considered evidence. Other than that, they would be considered non-evidentiary, and at 90 days, they would delete.
Thank you, sir. The next question will be for Chief Gillespie, followed by Chief Moya. For the departments that do not have body cameras, you have implied that the funding has not been made available for body cams. Why is that not a priority for your department?
Thank you. That was Nelson that said that they didn't have the funding. We've worked with our council. We've identified partial funding, and we're looking at using money from our law enforcement trust fund to be able to help fund this if we need to. So it is a priority. It's something that I used a body cam when I was with Montgomery County Police in Maryland. As a commander, I wore a body cam. I recognized that when I got here, and it's something that we had looked at prior to my arrival. And since then, I've been working with council, and I got the favorable go-ahead from council. And so we are working on that, and that's something that we're working with our union on policy. And once we get that done, the next step will be procuring and doing a pilot program. And again, we've already done the vetting process, benchmarking with other agencies. And so I hope to have that. It is something that's urgent. It's one of my biggest fears is these things happening and not being on camera. We need to have that.
So yeah, we hear me. So we take every approach to budget every year depending on the needs of the agency. Now, and by the way, none of this is the reason or excuse of how I'll wrap up. Our agency is the largest municipality in this county, So we currently serve just north of 118,000 people. And to that, I have 166 police officers. So that is a ratio that is currently number 4 in the state from the very bottom. Add to that dilapidated cars, which is, as you know, the way our folks respond to calls for service. So we do have to prioritize from year to year. Our priority for the last 3 years has been to raise the staffing while buying some new patrol cars, because ours are breaking down in response to calls for service. Now, I take that and I also monitor what's going on in our community. So one thing is, if I'm fielding a bunch of complaints from the community that are similar in nature, whether my investigations, my internal investigations point to any one thing systemically that I need to red flag. Now, thankfully, I don't have that. Now, that doesn't mean that it can't happen. It just means that that is one element that I consider when I look at things like body cams. But at some point, like I said earlier, at some point you have to kind of get off the pot and make a decision, right? And that's where I am now. So way too many things are happening in this country that police chiefs should be accountable for. So it comes down to the very transparency that I'm talking to you about. In fact, me and Chief Leslie had a phone conversation earlier in the week where we talked about body cams, because I know he's in the middle of a study. So I'll be looking at them. And funding comes down to the prioritization of our council of politicians, although they're not to blame. Ultimately, that prioritization falls on my shoulders. I accept that. And there is other funding that is available through law enforcement trust funds, which is something that I plan on exploring. So we're at the crossroads of making some decisions moving forward that would paint a clear picture of the community as to how we do our business. Thank you. Okay.
Just so you know, the 5 cards or questions that I have in my hand are the last questions. So at this time, we're not accepting any more questions. Sorry, Lady J. Thank you for coming. The Lord will bless you real good for being here. You look so nice. Smell so good. I'm sorry. Next question is, what are the efforts in your department to recruit from local high schools and minorities to promote community policing and diversity within your department?
So recruiting from the minority community, say, is a challenge. I believe everywhere is challenging. Sometimes I think it's because there's a trust issue, obviously, with our young men and women, given our culture where we are, and policing. And in order to bridge those gaps, it takes a lot of work to have people come from the community and say, you know what, I believe in what you stand for, and I want to serve alongside you. Having said that, we do try. So, Palmy High School has a criminal justice program. Palmy High School in the city of Melbourne. Sorry, sir. And we're well entrenched in that program. We have folks that are part of that curriculum. So it gives us a platform to not only deliver what we stand for, but along those lines, at that age level, to try to do some recruiting early on. I mentioned earlier things like mentoring programs where we're trying to entrench ourselves into the youth of the community and try to find out which ones we can inspire and motivate to look this way for a career field. I will also say, and forgive me for asking, but some of that civic duty falls on you.
Right.
I ask you, if you identify young men and women in a community, and a police chief and a police agency has already forged a relationship with you, and you trust them, I would say it's in part an obligation to try to make that connection. Because I don't want to sit idle and have a low percentage of African American or Latino or whatever, where we can do a lot better. But it does fall on both of our shoulders, and I hope you accept that responsibility. Thank you.
Thank you, Chief.
So, as I said, I came here from Montgomery County, Maryland, one of the most diverse communities in the country. I worked in a department that was very diverse. And when I got here the first day on the job, I looked at our percentages and I saw we have 2.7% African Americans. Immediately identified that as a problem and made it a priority. I thought that I'd be able to double that number in a year. It is not that easy, but it isn't for a lack of trying. I can tell you that we recently realigned our recruiter, so the recruiter is now with Community Services. So we're out there in the community programs recruiting. We have a female who is now our recruiter. We work with our local community to be able to identify with the churches and make it known that we are looking to diversify our community. We also, our department, and we also have we also have a program where we now do sponsorships. So we'll pay for you to go through the academy. You'll get a salary going to the academy, and that actually gives us to be able to reach people who would not be able to afford with themselves through the academy. And so through those efforts, and then re-implementing a ride-along program, a community academy, and working with our local community, that's what we're doing. I will tell you, we also put advertisements in Ebony News and for the red carpet event because we want to reach people of color, and I want our community our department to reflect our community, and I want to hire people right out of our backyard.
Holy crap. What happened? As far as the high school part of it, we have talked about trying to even come up with a program at Cocoa High. I know Rockledge does it, Palm Bay does it, some kind of program where we could do more. The one challenge there is with hiring out of high school is you can't go to the academy until you're 19. So a lot of high school kids graduate at 18, some are even graduating at 17. I mean, we're pushing them pretty hard, pretty fast to get through. Now, what we are looking at doing is creating what we call a public service position. It would be a civilian position. That position, you would be able to hire somebody out of high school. They could come in, they could work with the police department. Now, they wouldn't do specific law enforcement stuff, but they would do different things. And then once they turn 19, we'd be able to look at them, they'd be able to look at us. If it looked like a good relationship, then what we would do is sponsor them to go to the academy. We also are doing sponsorships now. We actually have an officer that we just did one not too long ago that's now with us now, and we are currently sponsoring somebody that is in the Brevard Academy currently. What was the second part of that question? There was a second part? Okay. I was trying to, yeah, I'm telling you, my brain was
Next question for Cocoa Mayor Williams. What are your plans to pursue equal justice and rights for all people in the city of Cocoa, especially related to police conduct during arrests?
Yeah, that's a tough question. I mean, we've been doing quite a few things since being elected to office back in 2018. So we've tried to develop a good relationship with the chief and many others. I'm sorry if I'm not standing. I had 2 knee replacements just about three years ago, so that walk kind of did me in. But anyway, we've been working on some stuff, and I know that we're going to get there. I think the chief has done a good job. As far as the relationship, we've been getting out in the community. We've been having community meetings and talking to all the residents, trying to encourage them to come to the council meetings. We've been trying to encourage them that, hey, if you have an issue, if you have a concern, bring it to us, because we don't know unless you bring it to us. I mean, we're out there, but in order to address the issues, we need for them to bring them to us. So it's working, it's happening, and we've been working on it.
Thank you,
Just
sir.
kind of put me on the spot there, but that's all right.
I warned you like 2 turns ago that you had a question. If you stay ready, you don't gotta get ready. Could you pass that Chief Campbell, please? Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I think you also forgot to mention, because, never mind, I won't do you like that. Your council has implemented a COCO PD Citizen Advisory Committee, of which I am the chair, shameless plug. Y'all gotta come to the meetings, because it's like 3 people at the meetings, by the way. So if you want accountability, you gotta show up. Sorry, that wasn't a question.
And if I can add, we're one of only 13 in the state of Florida, so just wanted to make you aware of that, sir.
What are the
Out of
meetings?
67 counties.
What are the meetings?
Oh, if I may, how many cities? 460 plus cities, one of 13. That's pretty impressive. The meetings for the COCO PD Citizen Advisory Committee are quarterly meetings at City Hall. Usually they're on a Wednesday evening at 6:30, 7 p.m. I usually advertise them on my Facebook page, and Deputy Mayor Goins usually shares them on his Facebook page, and I believe they put something out on the website. But
Routing is the way to get this, so, to my understanding, that was supposed to be implemented for oversight, correct? So is it really fair to have, ex-police officers on that board, because they normally will agree with each other? Do you think that's good for oversight? I'm just being, the word I've heard in the community, so can you answer that or help with that?
well, I don't know if there was space for another follow-up question, but I'm gonna answer the question because I think it's a great question. But you're gonna have to re-ask the question because it was a compound question. Please repeat the question.
I said, and I speak from knowing when it was assembled, or the person who pushed forward, who has personally come to me and said, that was supposed to be for oversight and for transparency, so if there is an issue within the department or something comes up, then the community can trust what the board relays. I said, so with that being in place for transparency or oversight, is it wise to have officers on there, ex-officers, because they're normally going to agree with the police?
I think I'll answer that question as chair of the committee. I think if Mayor Williams wants a piece of it, I'll give him a piece of it as well. Sorry for extending the time, Victoria, I apologize. I don't believe that it's wise to have a board with more than one ex-police officer on it, because there is one spot that must have a representative of the police. I forget the name of the organization, but there's a police-related organization of which one member is required to be on the board. However, I don't believe it's wise to dilute the board with multiple people in that position on the board. As it currently stands, we have 2 former law enforcement officers out of the 6 board members. Out of the 6 board members, we have 2 former law enforcement officers, as well as one woman who is the wife of the VCOP, the man that is in charge of the VCOP, the volunteer police. And so there are 3 out of 6 positions that are occupied by people that are either former law enforcement or closely related / married to someone that is managing the volunteer cop program. However, those positions are appointed positions by the council. And so you would have to look at who appointed what person to know who's putting these people on the board, and maybe raise that before COCO City Council. That would be your opportunity to speak out about that.
And modify the guidelines, okay, thank you.
Yes.
No.
Oh, no, there's no subpoena power. No.
That's modified in the guidelines, too.
That can be voted on by the council, I believe. I don't know. I don't know.
Thank you.
Okay.
State,
State level issue?
state level.
All right, I'll take your word for it. I don't know. Did you have something to add to that, Mayor?
No.
Okay. Next question.
As the chair, I believe that should be investigated in regards to what the requirements are for that board. We don't need an advisory board. We need a review board. We don't need to review what they've already done. We don't need to review what the police department has already done in specific cases. We need to be able to have subpoena power to investigate information on decisions made by wrongdoing.
Understood, sir, but I do believe it was your council that proposed the bill that eventually passed to create this board. And so it would be your council that was responsible for the language that created this board, correct?
Yes, you're correct.
Yes, sir.
I was a part of the council during that
Okay.
time, and it was a start for us. It was not a complete package deal in regards to going forward
So we got
with
it
that,
ratified.
with that particular board.
Okay.
We need to work to make the rules fair for the citizens, of course, period.
Okay, thank you. So the Cocoa City Council, I guess, can modify that. So show up to your council meeting and make it be heard, but know who made it and put it in place as well. Next question. How can we as a community teach our youth to respond in interactions with officers while pulled over or in a tense confrontation? I think that I am best equipped to answer this question as opposed to the chiefs. If one of them has something to add, they can add it, but I don't think that law enforcement is the best party to teach other people how to respond to law enforcement if they're performing arrests. There is another attorney in the room, one time for Jessica Travis. And and Attorney Fant, I apologize. You had your face covered, but that natural hair looks great on you. Attorney Fant. And D. Silva, that's my boss. I forgot. I'm so sorry. So we have several attorneys in the room. And one of the things that I do is I'm invited to different community functions to teach people and have Know Your Rights seminars. I'm not the only attorney that's willing to do things like this. I'm sure that if there's an attorney in your community that you trust, that you talk to, they might be willing to do a Know Your Rights seminar. But it's on you to ask, and it's also on you to show up when we have them. The seminars that I've done one at Endeavor, and I've done one at the community center in Palm Bay, forget the name of it. And each of them probably had 20 people or less in the room. And so maybe the question is, why aren't we interested in knowing our rights and educating our children on these things? But it's not my place to ask questions, so I'm gonna move on to the next question. Excuse me?
Answer the question.
I did answer the question. You can teach children by hosting seminars with attorneys so that people can teach them their rights, because legal professionals have the ability to teach young people and old people what their rights are when encountered by law enforcement. Ms. Fant?
I think it's still important for us to hear what the officers would have to say about this topic as well, just from
Okay.
their perspective. Thank you.
Chief?
We actually put together with some of our faith-based leaders, we put together a video a while back and put it out on Facebook, put it on our social media, was on our webpage for a while, but we actually, on how you would interact on a traffic stop, because there was a lot of questions about different things that were going on, how to react, how not to react. So we actually did a video and put it out, and we actually got a pretty good response from that video. I think it made it simple for people to see. A lot of times you can tell somebody, I mean, I know myself, you can tell me something, but if I can see it in a video, I can look at it, sometimes it is easier for people to grasp.
Thank you, sir.
So at one of our most recent Red Ribbon events, it was an actual drug event, we had a speaker that came in and we actually did a role play. We took the chairs and we had the seats up front and then the people in the back seat, and they had the music playing and they're having conversation, and I walk up to the driver's side and then we just go through and walk through a traffic stop. And it was very good. I think it's a great opportunity with a large audience to then be able to have follow-up conversations. The other thing is, it's about also personal responsibility when you stop by an officer. Like what we would like to do is to have our officers come up to the car, identify themselves, and let you know where we're from. I'm Chief Gillespie from Melbourne Police Department. I stopped you because you ran the red light. Right there kind of deflates it a little bit, lets you know why you stopped. And so from there, it's just about respect and trying to work through whatever the issues are at that time.
Same thing. Over the years, we've taken platforms to have that discussion. I think the most recent one, maybe the Summit of Seven, where our de-escalation instructor did a presentation on what to expect from the police when you get pulled over and what actions we hope that you bring forward at that moment. And that's all fine and dandy, but my obligation is to make sure that the police that are doing this stop can sort through any behavior that comes their way, right? Because you're going to have people with different emotions, different level of emotions, different backgrounds. I'll tell you right now, I'm from the South Bronx, so I still get pulled over once in a while because sometimes I speak a little bit. And I am petrified. I am petrified because where I come from, by the way, I'm from Colombia originally, so a different country altogether where there's a total disconnect in law and order. You don't trust the police. And I still have that fear today. So it comes down to the power of a police officer, to recognize that and talk his way through what he sees in front of him. Yep.
How does the police union either work with you or resist you from making changes in culture and making changes in how you discipline officers' bad conduct?
That's a great question. So there's Chief Gillespie's from North, because he will attest that there's a huge difference between police unions north of the Mason-Dixon line and south of the line. Up north, there's something called binding arbitration, right? And it applies for everything. So police unions tend to be extremely powerful. And that's why you see a lot of things that you see in northern states. And, I'm not here to judge them. I'm just telling you what the facts are. Judge for yourself. Down here, our police unions are predominantly fraternal, although they are involved in contract negotiations, policy to some extent, development, and certainly officer discipline. But the representatives that represent our officers are also employees themselves. Aside from the state reps, they're accountable to my office, and I'm accountable to their board. So there's constant communication, constant relationship maintenance that I do and that my staff does to ensure that there's communication. So in terms of, for example, let's take a use of force case. On the onset of a complaint where it's stamped, it's an internal affairs investigation, I meet with that union president. In short of obviously not violating the law, because the internal affairs cases are mandated by statute, I will have a brief discussion and hypothetical with that union president. And we're going to talk about what has come to my office and what I expect to happen as a course of the investigation. Certainly, as the investigation proceeds, I may give a heads up on how things are going in terms of just the investigation alone, not the facts, but the progress of the investigation. And it comes down to communication. If you talk to your union and they understand your principles and your leadership style, what you stand for, it's going to be a lot easier to implement and sustain change when it's needed. And certainly, when you apply discipline, if you've already communicated everything leading up to it, it's no surprise. There you go. Yes.
So I think this is a great question. I think it's important for the community to understand the role of the union and the impact that has on how we actually administer discipline. The role of the union is to protect the officer and make sure that their rights are not violated. So their law enforcement officer bill of rights, will make sure that we're following the right procedures in any sort of internal investigation. It's not just the union, it's the culture of the organization that impacts what the response is when we go to administer discipline. So I can tell you that there are times where you work with the union's ready to work with somebody and have something resolved, but then the culture of the organization takes over. And so that's something that you gotta weed out. That's something that you gotta work through, and that takes time, and it takes a commitment, and it's difficult to do. I will tell you, when I got here, the discipline came to the chief. Very few people else were involved. I've gotten our commanders involved so that they actually are a part of the process of doing the investigations or reviewing them and then making recommendations for discipline. So that raises their level of performance, their ability to hold their people accountable, and it helps them grow as a leader in the organization. All those things are key elements to having a functional department that has that piece of accountability, because no policy, no rule is effective if there is not accountability.
We have a good working relationship with our union. Many of the times we look at things. Again, I'll meet with our PBA reps when we do an internal affairs investigation a lot of times, and I'll tell them up front. The one thing that I have that works good for us is we have body cam video. 99.99% of the time, there's body cam video of whatever incident has occurred. So it's pretty hard. It's pretty simple. If you look at the body cam video, if it's wrong, it's wrong. If it's right, it's right. It's simple. So that's the biggest thing for us, is being able to look at it and say it is.
Oh, you know what, I'm sorry, this question isn't for you. You're off the hook. Thank you, Chief. Final question is, well, this question is directed at Chief Moya. Chief Moya, you spoke of a lone officer at 2 in the morning. Has your department considered 2-man units to prevent these officers who disregard policy?
Well, let me not make any assumption that that lone officer is violating policy. That is a symbolic hypothetical of the power of a lone officer while interacting with one community member. So let me tell you how we do business. We are known for relentless backing up of each other, meaning a police officer can do a stop because they're sole officers per car. Within, generally, and we've done the math on it, within 3 minutes, that officer is backed up by another officer. That has a multi-purpose effect. Number 1, for obvious reasons, for safety. Number 2, to bear witness. And that goes both ways. So, just because you are a sole officer, that doesn't mean, and certainly we shouldn't presume that means that it's just a matter of time before you do something wrong. Now, my community is 88 square miles. And I just got done telling you that we're 4th from the bottom in the state in terms of staffing, where I should be at about 206 police officers currently just to maintain them at 166. So can you imagine if I doubled up my patrol workforce, that's about 120 people? So now response time comes into effect if I do that. Right now, I'll have to spread them out as much as I can so that they can be accessible to respond to Category 2, serious calls for service, which, by the way, were trending really high a year ago, and we've cut them in half through good leadership and efforts. So in order for me to consider doubling up cars, it would have to be a more condensed area, heavily populated, where I can say, okay, I can focus 2 man units in this given area with some degree of success. But I know that if I do that, my response times to calls for service may very well go up. Hope that answers the question.
Thank you, Chief. You can hold on to it. One final question. Chief Moya, are you, and this is for all the chiefs, are you open to having meetings like this on a more regular basis, such as 2 to 3 times a year?
Number one, of course, the answer is absolutely yes, but let me immediately and confidently say with a degree of arrogance, forgive me, that we do have these meetings more than 2 to 3 times a year. I'm looking at folks that I meet with that are on this north end of the county that I meet with. So we have these meetings once a month in my community. We have multi-jurisdictional meetings, and I'm not going to point at folks in the room, quarterly, with this gentleman right here, myself, South End Chiefs. So we're constantly communicating and engaging our community. But again, those relationships that should be forged systemically, right? There's only one element of the big picture. And that bigger picture I go back to, and forgive me for being redundant, which is, and it keeps coming up again, is that element of culture, the development and maintaining the healthy culture and leadership within that culture. Thank you.
So, of course, we're open to having more meetings. We need genuine dialogue about tough conversations. I will tell you, in Melbourne, we have the Police Community Relations Council meeting. That's monthly. We rotate it on the north end and the south end. I'll use this opportunity to invite all of you out on Thursday night at 6 o'clock. We're going to have a march. At 7 o'clock, we're going to have a meeting. It's the Joseph Davis Community Center. That's this coming Thursday. So, on Grant Street. So I welcome you to come out and have more conversations about, some of the things that we're talking about here tonight and today. And absolutely, this is something that's needed, and we need to continue to find ways to continue this dialogue so that we can build the trust. As your representative, these are your police departments. We are your police chiefs. We welcome that opportunity, the scrutiny, the transparency, for you to be comfortable with the way we carry out our duties, the way we hold people accountable, the way we train people, and the policies that we develop to make sure they're fair, to make sure they're just. Thank you.
I'm always open to meet. We meet with our faith-based community quarterly. I meet with residents every day. My door is always open. I give everybody my cell phone. Most people here probably already have my cell phone, so I give everybody my numbers. You can contact me anytime. As Elton said, we have the Police Review Board quarterly, and we were really, really hoping that that would be just that, a place that people could come out, we could talk, we could work through things, and we could listen and get input on how we could do things better for our community. So yes, I'm always open.
Thank you. I think we'll put Reverend Dennis in charge of it. You'll like that? Just kidding, I'm sorry. All right, at this time, we will have our closing prayer by Reverend.
Yeah, you put me on the spot, maybe you want to.
Oh, I'm sorry, I'm taking away your closing remarks. Let me move out of your way.
That's all right. First of all, I want to thank everyone for coming out today. This has been, can you hear me okay? Yeah. This has been absolutely amazing and incredible what happened today. I'm so proud of our city. I'm so proud of our sister city. I'm so proud of all the folks that come from Palm Bay, Melbourne, and throughout participated in this whole march today. This is truly a blessing. I'm not going to talk too much today because I know that a lot of us want to get home. It's been a long day, but I did want to recognize some people here from the city of Cocoa as well as some others. I got my Deputy Mayor here, Deputy Mayor Goins, that's here, President. Councilwoman Cost is President. Councilwoman Warner is President. We got Councilwoman and also Space Coast League, the city president, Yvonne Minus. We have Pastor, Dr., Councilman Sean Ferguson, love this guy, Rockland. And then also Mike Cador, Councilman Cador, and holds many titles. We thank you for being here with us. And we have a couple of individuals that are running for council seats in the city of Cocoa. We're glad to have them here. Lavanda Kearns is running for District 2. He's I guess, a county firefighter. We have him, and we got a former judge advocate